Woman hears strange noise, then catches him in act. She paused the footage and zoomed in. That was definitely not a kitten. She squinted, trying to make out its features. There seemed to be something wrong with its eyes. What was she looking at? She looked closer and closer until she began to realize something was definitely wrong. Startled, she screamed for help. Brenda Stewart lived on the ground floor of a small apartment complex by herself and her 2 cats. If you didn't know any better, you might mistake her for a crazy cat lady. She loved cats, but she also loved her job as a teacher. Her work schedule meant that she could enjoy long evenings as well as a long 3-month work-free summer. That gave her the time to practice her favorite hobby, snooping. Brenda was a very friendly neighbor to her fellow apartment owners in her apartment block. Some thought she was overbearing and nosy about their lives, others just thought she was a bit lonely. Truth is, it was a bit of both. And no one knew this more than the man who lived closest to her, her neighbor Mark. Mark was just back from a trip abroad and was carrying his luggage back to his apartment when Brenda raced out to greet him. With no time to lose, she asked him where he went and how his trip was. Impatient to get to his apartment, Mark gave quick responses and continued walking. Suddenly, Brenda gasped as she pottered up to him. "Is that a cat?" she asked. Mark was carrying a small pet cage. The size looked appropriate for a cat. Brenda got closer and asked if she could see it. But surprisingly, Mark refused. He closed the door behind him. But only after the animal made a very strange noise. As a cat lover, Brenda never heard a cat make that noise before. She also found it very odd that he wouldn't let her see it. Aren't new owners usually excited to show everyone their new fur baby? Something was off. Brenda was eager to question Mark again about his new pet, but she hadn't seen him leave the apartment in days. He worked from home, so Brenda became even more suspicious when he didn't answer the doorbell. There was only one thing left to do. He had to go outside with his new pet eventually, right? So, instead of waiting outside all week, Brenda set up a hidden camera, but she never could have guessed she'd catch this on tape. She placed the camera outside her door and turned it in the direction of Mark's apartment. After 2 weeks of recording, Brenda watched for footage back. As she settled into her couch, her imagination ran wild. What if he had some new undiscovered creature like the one picture above? That would explain the bizarre sound she heard. But what she was about to see was much bigger. Brenda pressed fast forward on the footage until she saw a movement. At first she saw nothing unusual, just Mark leaving for the gym or groceries. But then she spotted something in his window. She paused and zoomed in. It was definitely not a kitten, and there seemed to be something off with its eyes. They resembled something else entirely. She looked closer and realized something was definitely wrong. Startled, Brenda immediately reached for her phone and called animal control. She reported exactly what she saw in Mark's apartment and all about his reclusive behavior and unwillingness to let her see the animal. She reassured them that it could be nothing, but animal control wasn't willing to take that chance. Soon, all hell would break loose. Animal control showed up with the cops shortly after Brenda's call. They banged on Mark's door, stating their presence and to let them in. Brenda watched with fascination as Mark resisted their entry. After a long battle of door shoving, the authorities finally entered his apartment. However, they had no time to rejoice as they walked straight into danger. Authorities busted through the door to see Mark panting, winded from trying to keep the door shut and something big behind him. They froze as they took in the sight of the rare beast. Brenda, looking in from outside the door, gasped in shock. The police ordered Mark to restrain the animal and hand him over. What was he hiding? Brenda's hunch was right. Animal control busted through Mark's doors and caught him red-handed. He was hiding a puma in his apartment, which was illegal in the state. Mark did as the officers commanded and managed to get the big cat into a carrier without much difficulty. The puma, named Tuscan, was young and relatively friendly, but with big cats that could change in an instant. Animal control brought Tuscan to a big cat sanctuary, about a 2-hour drive from Mark's apartment. It was a devastating blow for Mark, but he also knew it was the right thing to do. As the animal grew, Mark suddenly realized that his apartment wasn't big enough for him, and with his existence in his apartment being illegal, Mark began to feel cruel as he couldn't let him play outside. But it wasn't the end of the story for Mark and his beloved cat. Mark tried to visit the sanctuary as often as he can and will often come bearing treats. Tuscan still remembers him, but also enjoys the bigger space and presence of other cats to play with. So it's a win-win situation. However, once the media got hold of the story, not everyone agreed with how the situation was handled. Some questioned the law in place that bans big cats from being house pets. If Mark was treating him well and it was a safe situation, why couldn't he keep it? But the majority agreed with the ban and explained that although Mark was feeding and sheltering his pet well and loved him, he wasn't treating him well because of the enclosed space and inside living environment. What do you think?